Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please join us in thanking today's General Session sponsor, Nevada Gold Mines, operated by Barrick.
Nevada Gold Mines was established in 2019 as a joint venture, held 68.5% by Barrick, the operator, and 31.5% by Newmont. The company's significant assets across Nevada were combined to create the world's single largest gold-producing complex, producing approximately 3.5 million ounces of gold a year. At Nevada Gold Mines, our vision is to create long-term value for all of Nevada, and we live out that vision by embedding the principles of partnership and sustainability into every decision we make. We are all Nevadans, and together we make the Silver State and its future golden.
To start our program, please welcome the President and Chief Executive Officer for the National Mining Association, Rich Nolan.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the opening session of MINExpo International 2021. I'm Rich Nolan, President and CEO of the National Mining Association, and it is my great pleasure to be here in person to kick off the show today. I want to start by thanking our show chair, Jeff Dawes with Komatsu Mining, who has led us through this last year when we had to postpone the show in 2020 and reschedule it for this year. I also want to very much thank our opening session sponsor, Nevada Gold Mines, operated by Barrick. Thank you for your support for this morning's session. We are thrilled to be back together and thank you all for your I want to thank all the exhibitors for continuing to support the show and each of our attendees for participating in what promises to be a truly extraordinary 3 days. This is truly a remarkable moment for mining. Never has the policy agenda in Washington meant so much for mining and simultaneously relied so much on our industry to achieve it. From rebuilding infrastructure to supporting economic recovery with reliable, affordable energy to reshoring manufacturing and building a secure domestic material supply chains, these goals will be met with mining and innovation and technology driven by this remarkable industry. Even with this positive momentum, there is, in the U.S., some concerning efforts in Congress that would make the industry less competitive on the global stage. Specifically, there are a number of proposals within the reconciliation package in Congress now being debated in Washington that would impose significant new royalties and fees on the domestic mining sector. If enacted, they would effectively stall the U.S. in the global race for critical materials. These proposals damage the competitiveness of the industry when we know we need responsible domestic production for everything from the careful energy transition to the EV revolution. At the National Mining Association, we often emphasize that made in America must include mined in America. As we work to educate policymakers about the importance of a strong domestic industry, we need to be working together as a global industry to deliver exactly what the world needs. That's one of the reasons I'm so pleased to see representatives from more than 30 countries participating in the show this week. The world's energy, infrastructure, and technology goals demand these innovative and global solutions. We must responsibly produce coal needed to meet the world's voracious appetite for steel and electricity, providing a critical bridge to our energy future while helping to lift tens of millions out of energy poverty. And we must help shape the policy environment that doesn't sacrifice energy reliability and affordability while we work to develop and deploy the technology solutions that will support a careful energy transition in the United States and around the world. We must also work together to find secure, responsible supplies of mine materials to meet the staggering demands that lie ahead. The demand forecasts are real. Lithium demand growing at 40-fold by 2040, followed by graphite, cobalt, nickel growing at 20 to 25 times. Copper demand doubling. No country will be able to sit on the sidelines. As they answer the call of the world's increasingly hungry supply chains, producers around the world will be utilizing best-in-class mining equipment, all of which can be found right here at MINExpo. From artificial intelligence to 3D modeling and virtual reality, the equipment being utilized at mine sites today improves safety, operational efficiency, and production. We have pieces of equipment that are talking to each other and relaying information to site managers and equipment operators miles away and across the globe, reducing downtime and helping to improve safety. The innovations you will see over the next 3 days are true game changers in unlocking the potential for our industry. A tradition at MINExpo has been to open the show with a distinguished panel of our industry leaders. We continue that tradition this morning. Our panel is ideally suited to present an informed outlook of challenges and the opportunities that now are before us and over the horizon. We hope to cover a range of topics from lessons learned from the pandemic to the emerging fight to recruit talent and upcoming innovations. To introduce our panel this morning, I will hand things over to our moderator, the highly regarded journalist and commentator, A.B. Stoddard. A.B. is Associate Editor and columnist for Real Clear Politics. She has covered the U.S. Congress since 1994 for States News Service, the Hill newspaper, and was the Senate producer for ABC News. She is a guest host on Sirius XM's POTUS channel and appears on MSNBC, CNN, and Fox. A.B., thanks so much for being with us and for helping draw out the varied views from some of our great industry leaders. A.B., my pleasure to turn the podium over to you to start the panel this morning. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome, welcome, everyone. After a long, many years, it is my honor today to moderate our panel of distinguished industry leaders, and we are excited to hear from all of them. I want to start with Mark Bristow, President and CEO of Barrick Gold, one of the world's leading gold producers. We are also joined by Paul Lang, President and CEO of Arch Resources, a leading American metallurgical coal mining and processing company. We're also joined by Jimmy Brock, Chair of the Board of NMA and President and CEO of Consol Energy, a producer of high BTU coal. Next, we're also joined by Denise Johnson, Group President of Resource Industry for Caterpillar, the world's largest mining and construction equipment manufacturer. And finally, we'll be joined by Jeff Dawes, Chairman of MINExpo 2021 and President and CEO of Komatsu Mining, the second largest mining and construction equipment manufacturer. Can we get a round of applause for our distinguished panel? Thanks, everyone. So this is quite an assembly after all these years with an interruption from the pandemic, and there's obviously a lot of excitement about gathering together in person. I want to start with Jeff and Denise, asking if we could start with you, Jeff. What is your company showcasing this year, and what new technologies do you expect to see from exhibitors that you are the most excited about this year?
Thanks, AB. I might take the mask off. People struggle to understand my Australian accent with this.
It's my favorite accent.
You know, mining's a very fraternal industry, so I think one of the best things about this show is that we're back together again, which is extremely important. But the main drive, the main theme behind the show as a whole, and also the Komatsu stand, is sustainability in mining. So we're focusing on automation, electrification, and digital transformation. And I think you'll see that as you go around the show, and you'll especially see that as you go around the Komatsu stand.
And Denise?
Thank you. Agree completely with Jeff. I think, you know, without a doubt, the big theme for this year is around sustainability. And, you know, that's in stark contrast to the theme in 2016. So you see a real transformation, if you will, in what the exhibitors are showing. At the same time, I think looking at it more from an overall site infrastructure as well perspective. So not just point solutions, but holistically kind of looking at it from a site perspective. So it's interesting as you look at some of what's at the Caterpillar exhibit, but also a lot of our suppliers and other exhibitors, it's very broad.
And Jimmy, what are you looking for from these suppliers for both this year, 2021, and beyond? And how would you, looking back at the last 5 to 10 years, say that the most recent technologies have impacted your operations?
I think when you look at the mining industry as a whole, particularly as an operator, one of the crucial things for us moving forward is going to be innovation in technology. So when we look at the equipment we use for our people to operate and run, we want something that's, you know, highly efficient, adapts to the technologies and innovations that are needed today, because with mining in particular, particularly coal mining, there's a lot of pressure, you know, from ESG firms and other things. So anything that we can be a part of and help partner, not only from an engineering standpoint, from an operating standpoint, that puts us in a better position forward for sustainability as well as environmental compliance.
And Paul, how about you?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to this is, you know, I think what we're all looking for at the end is something that's going to improve safety and productivity. And, you know, the safety part is the most complex, I think, of all the issues we face. And that the automation is clearly one of the ways we're going to improve safety. So that's one of the main things we're looking for.
And Mark?
So my view is that we've seen a lot of talk in the last 2 years, and this is the first time we've got together as a mining industry. We've got an enormous amount of work to do, and you know, I think it's easy to talk, but technical delivery is going to be the challenge. And we've seen the real kickstart in the whole technological conceptualization, but to convert that now into genuine benefits that impact our future operations without compromising our ability to bring those disadvantaged people along with us, which is something that the mining industry does very well.
And we're obviously fighting our way through the pandemic, but the economy is rebounding and prospects for growth are returning. Infrastructure investments will help drive the demand for commodities. I'd like to start with you, Paul. Can you tell us about the role you see mining playing in supporting global growth in the years to come?
Well, obviously, that's part of what we're here today about. And as I look at this question, I think there's both a kind of a global answer and kind of a local answer to it. Starting with the kind of the more macro answer, you know, as I look at the transition my company made, about 10 years ago, we decided to start the pivot towards steel making and metallurgical coal. And that premise was not a real eloquent one, but it was driven on the idea and the main thesis that developing economies and urbanization are going to drive the demand for steel. And we saw that particularly in Asia. We believed that 10 years ago, and the fact is it's only holding more true. And when you add the current events that are going on today, and you see the desire to have stimulus spending and infrastructure, Green New Deal, that demand for steel is only going to increase. And the fact is there's not enough scrap. So as we start looking towards electric vehicles, wind turbines, mass transit systems, all the things that make urbanization and the Green New Deal possible, mining is going to play a huge role in that globally. Then just kind of to flip quickly to the kind of the local impact of that as I see it. I think the best example I can think of and how this plays out is Barber County, West Virginia, which is where we've opened in the last 10 years 2 new mines. We've invested about almost $1 billion and hired almost 1,000 people in that area. We weren't the only impetus there, but we've clearly made a transformational to the economy in a very small regional area that was traditionally limited in what it could do. So clearly the industry is playing a big role.
And Jimmy, how about your perspective on both global growth and the impacts on local economies?
Yeah, as I look forward into the future, one of the things that we try to do at CONSOL Energy is to diversify our revenue streams. So we sell coal not only for electric generation, we also sell it for cement, brick kiln markets, and all those things. But as we look forward, along with technology and innovation, I think there's going to be a tremendous opportunity for us. I worry sometimes about, like, for an example, what's coming at us today, the very aggressive timeline. Can we get to 50% reductions of CO2 emissions by 2030? Can we get, totally there by 2035, which is really aggressive targets. My biggest concern about that is we won't get to enjoy the fruits of the labor that we've done so far. With all the innovation, the technology that we put in place, it needs time to play out and to work. And as we sit here today, about 60% of all the electrical demand is coming from fossil fuels. So how we turn that switch, that quickly, we get down to all renewables. And I'm a coal producer, or we are at CONSOL Energy, but I'm truly for all the above. So I think we need all the energy sources out there. I think we're going to have to work together with the manufacturers, the equipment people, and everybody get on the same team to whereas we can do the best things for our people in our communities. And for us, when I look at the communities, we do not just donate money to those communities with schools and things like that. It's an investment. We want to invest in those communities because those are our employees of the future. Those are the workplaces where we continue to work. So I think as we continue with innovation, technology, education for the people, and do what we can do all of the above. We can reduce CO2 emissions. We have been doing that. And we can provide affordable electricity for every American, and we can allow, undeveloped countries to develop as well.
And Denise, how about from your sector's perspective?
Well, I think ensuring, we do definitely see continued demand and growth. And as you start to look at, how do you manifest yourself in really serving the mining companies and partnering with them in ways that help them achieve their goals, it ends up putting you on a path that allows you to prioritize what will make the biggest impact to be able to hit those targets and those goals. And so as we look at certainly where we operate, how we can support, we're looking at setting some pretty clear roadmaps to be able to get there. I think as you look at the communities on a local basis that we serve, we're certainly recognizing that we play a part in the ecosystem of a mine site in a way that can contribute to everything from noise emission to actual carbon reduction. And so as we start to look at providing solutions, we're thinking more holistically across the site and ensuring that we have the technologies available during the right timeline. So it's as simple as that, I think.
And Jeff?
Yeah, sure. I agree with what Denise said. And what we've seen, it's an industry challenge, the sustainability. So there's been a marked change in the relationship that we have with our customers. We've gone from more of a transactional relationship, which existed, 10, 15, 20 years ago, where we just sold them machines and parts. And now we're collaborating, working together to solve these problems in the future, because a lot of them don't have a solution right now. As Jimmy said, how do we transition out of fossil fuels? There's no clear solution right now. We as an industry need to work together on that to solve that problem.
Well, on that topic, many in the mining industry have made commitments to an ESG framework in the face of stakeholder demands and making some commitments to reduce operational Scope 1 and Scope 2 CO2 emissions, among other things. And some companies are only just getting started in the process. Want to hear what steps your companies are taking and what you see as the biggest challenges now and to come. And I'm going to start with you, Mark.
So that's it's a very good question, and it's something that I think over the next 3 days we're going to really reflect on, because it's all very well making a promise, but it's a much bigger responsibility, and I would like to suggest that the United States of America has a deep sink of technology and ability, and it also has really big, well-run, first world style mines. And often people sort of push it away as, a developed country. And I think what we see here today, and you see in the exhibits, is the ability for this country to really lead the world in technology and innovation. And I think that's what we need. And at the same time, one of the things is it's all very well looking at GHGs and emissions, but there's a broader ESG base to our responsibility. And the other thing is that if we think that the world is that the countries like the United States is an island, we're in big trouble. And more than 50% of mankind still hasn't got electricity, still hasn't got access to technology. So, and as miners, we are often at the frontier of that economic development. And we've seen over the last decade the move from input, what are we doing, building schools, that sort of thing, to impact. That is being genuine about our partnerships with our stakeholders, our host countries, etc. And so I think everyone in this audience and those here today, as leaders in the industry, we need to really claim that, and we need to take on the responsibility of participating in a global sense.
You have said that CO2 is, the ESG frameworks are not just solely based on CO2 emissions, and that it should not come at the expense. How do you balance this stakeholder demand for decarbonization with the right to develop in developing countries?
Yeah, and I think that's very important. I grew up in Africa, and poverty is equally as destructive as greenhouse gas emissions. And they're connected, actually. I remember once talking to a politician out of the UK, and he couldn't see the connection between poverty and environmental destruction. And on top of that, we've seen what poverty does as far as breeding radicalism. And so we've got a big challenge ahead of us as the developed world, the privileged few, to not only worry about the globe as a whole, but also the people that actually live on that globe. And I think mining and we've got to take our responsibility back into our own hands and really demonstrate, and we've done, as a mining industry, done so much in that ESG arena, and I think we can do a lot more.
I want to bring in Paul and Jimmy on this topic as well.
You know, I think Mark made some very good comments, and you know, I think I would start off simply by saying that ESG is something the industry should not fear. It's actually something we should embrace and I think should profit from. The principles should be what we have been striving for anyway. ESG is simply put a framework around it, and we need to do a better job of socializing the very things that we've been doing every day. And you know, and clearly the issues in rural U.S., particularly parts of West Virginia, Kentucky, are not what you see in continental Africa, but there are social issues that we can help address. And we should embrace those and take them on. And I think, as I said, I think there is a value to that. You know, and I'll give my own example where we are a smaller, more focused company, but it's more profitable focusing on products that tend to have a smaller footprint. And those are the type of things we can all do. And as I said, we should not fear the ESG specter.
And Jimmy?
Oh, sorry.
No problem.
No, ESG, you know, it is, I agree with Paul, I agree with Mark. It's something that we do have to embrace going forward, and we have been. The problem is we as CEOs and other people that we haven't done a very good job of communicating what we have done. And when you get out, you know, if you ask 100 people, what do you know about ESG? The first thing they want to talk about is the E, the environmental part. No one wants to talk about the social part, which is, to Mark's point earlier, is critical. I mean, what happens to these communities when mining companies pull out or when we don't invest in those communities is devastating to them. They never overcome it for the most part. I sat on a panel here 3 weeks ago, and Secretary Granholm was down in Morgantown, West Virginia, and we had people sitting there talking, and the theme most of the day was, I listened to 5 people talk, and really everybody talked about revitalizing the community, creating all the new jobs, what you're going to do with all those. And during closing remarks, one of the comments I made was, I listened to everyone talk all day today, and I heard everyone talking about revitalizing the communities, creating jobs for those communities, creating funds for them, increasing broadband. All of those are important steps. But I didn't hear anyone talking about what can we do to preserve what we have today. And when you look at ESG, from Consol Energy, we've had 4 corporate sustainability reports now. So I think a big part of ESG is disclosure. You know, disclose what we can, be honest and true about it, and be transparent. And we've done that. I look at really the biggest impacts we can have currently today are really Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. So when you look, our biggest impact has come from air quality and energy management. And I'll give you an example. On the air quality, we have, you know, methane fans that discharge methane into the atmosphere. We have gobwell gas that we drill that brings the gas out of the gobs, makes the coal mine a lot safer to operate, and we discharge that into the atmosphere. Well, now we've implemented processes and plans and technology. We've partnered with these companies that we use oxidation to oxidize and destroy that methane before it gets into the atmosphere. We started this process 2 to 3 years ago, and I think our VP of Corporate Sustainability will be talking later today, but the last time I checked with her, 700,000 tons of CO2 we've mitigated since 2018. And the other part that we've been able to do very successfully is on water. So since 2019, we have recycled about 2 billion gallons of water. And people might say, well, why is that important? But what it does is it eliminates the withdrawal from public water, from streams, or from surface draw-off, to whereas we can use our own water and recycle it over and over again. So we've been very successful in doing that. We have also implemented software that works off energy demand. So we don't use as much energy. We've partnered with some of the power companies to whereas it's a peak load, we may actually shut down and not run for those 2 hours, and we'll work it out where it's a shift change or something like that, to whereas we can manage that energy. And thus far, that's resulted in a 28% reduction in that demand. So we continue to do those things, but the one thing I would tell the audience, we should never forget about the social part of ESG. You know, our board is all over the governance part on ethics and those topics, disclosures, but we should never forget about those communities where we work and live. It's just as important as the environmental or any other issues there.
Okay, Jeff, I'm going to look to your, from your perspective now. I know your sector of the industry is looking to alternatives to diesel, but some of those options are not yet operational. What is available today, and how should mining companies bridge the old and new in these interim years until they are?
Well, it was mentioned previously that there's been some very significant commitments made about greenhouse gas reduction, and now we have to work out how we're going to meet those commitments. We recently entered into our Greenhouse Gas Alliance with some of our major clients to build a zero-emission truck going forward. Now, you know, those trucks can run on a diesel engine, or battery, or trolley, or hydrogen fuel cells going forward. The idea, and that some of the technology doesn't exist yet, so we're working with our customers, with our clients, to try and develop a platform which will enable us to adopt that technology when it is available. There's some huge challenges. You know, it's very easy to say, look, we'll just electrify all the trucks. If you take a normal deep pit copper mine that has a fleet of 70 trucks, and you replace all those diesel engines with electric batteries, for example, that's an extra 50 megawatts of power that that mine requires. And it has to be green power. So the relationship that we have with our customers now has to be much more collaborative, and we have to involve them in our development process much, much earlier than before, because their investment in infrastructure to build trolley lines, to build green generation stations, to provide the power to run a battery-powered truck, or hydrogen tanks, is billions of dollars. And it requires them to do a lot of work as well in parallel, so we can come together as an industry and have a solution down the track before the 2030 guideline that's been set.
And Denise.
Sure. So I think there are ways to move along the journey faster. And, you know, we still sell a considerable amount of Tier 2 engines today. So when you think about reducing emissions gradually over time, there's opportunity to buy more advanced emissions packaged engines in you know, that still run diesel. In addition to that, there's opportunity to use various fuels, whether it be biofuels or liquefied natural gas. So there's ways to kind of step along the journey. I think in addition to that, and certainly, you know, we are all investing in batteries and hydrogen fuel cells and such for the longer term. You know, there's ways with the use of technology to really reduce that footprint as well. So when you think about automation, that in itself can reduce emissions from a site because you're running more efficiently, you're running more productively. So there are ways to integrate that in and move along the journey. I think one of the things we're finding is that the solution set is going to be very unique to the customer and where they're located, and what makes sense economically, or you know, even from a viability infrastructure perspective, will be different. And so what works in South Africa may not work in Nevada. And so as we start to look at solution sets, then it forces you to develop a pretty broad range of solutions that can be available when they're ready to make that transition. But it's going to be, it is interesting to see that there's much that can be done to move along that journey today.
Okay, so to touch back on what Jimmy was discussing, the energy, metals, and minerals your companies produce contribute to a higher standard of living, not only for society at large, but for your employers and their families and their communities. How do you think about your role in those communities and your stewardship of their local resources? What principles do you follow for a positive impact, impacting a broader set of stakeholders? And let's start with you, Paul.
Yeah, as I look at, the basic social contract which we all operate on, I think there's no question we're all going to follow the rules and regulations, but I think the fact is, for us to be profitable and thrive, we have to go beyond that. And we have to, really invest in the stakeholders and particularly the employees. The employees are one of the most key facets of all this, and being a part of the community that we live in or work in. One of the first things I always do when I go to an operation or as I talk to operations is, one of the questions I like to ask when I go is how their retention rate is. And retention has always been an interesting, what I think is a leading indicator of a lot of things. It's the spirit, it's the issues, and a high turnover is never a good sign. And I think about all the time we have invested in these people, and that if we're losing them, we've failed. So, I think what's important to start with on the stakeholders is, we do what we can on local and hire the people we can and let the community get the benefit of the operation. We train these people and give them skills that are not only that would apply to our operations, but to other industries or even other operations. I think it's key. And the last piece is, this is where I started, which is the retention. It's always going to be critical for people.
And Mark?
So I think that really is it. License to operate is probably a better term. And that is today, your license to operate as a miner is probably more important than the legal license to mine. And it's really built on stakeholders. And, traditionally, 3 decades ago, our only stakeholder were our shareholders. And today, host countries or states and the communities around our mines and as Paul says, the workers are very key stakeholders. And I think, it's encouraging to see a few young faces in this audience, but we're still too old-fashioned as a mining industry. And if we want to really be the miners of the future, we have to be more acceptable to future generations. And I think young people, that's a critical part of that license to operate. And younger people want to come to work and feel that they're not only working and achieving something for themselves, but they're making a difference to the world. And as you heard the governor this morning, the thing that we've got in his head is mining in this modern age where there are a lot of new jobs, but they're all very menial. We offer really top careers and high skills. And I think it's something, again, as was said earlier, we should promote and celebrate that because we do bring something very special to the future and our planet.
We're going to get to the complex topic of the young in just a minute. But I want to give Jimmy one more opportunity to weigh in on this question, if you have anything else to add.
Sure, I think Mark and Paul covered it pretty well, but I will say the future for us is educating those people. Today, not only in our communities, but in universities and other things, because we have a lot of people out there, and you can pick up any newspaper you want, any publication, and they seem to think that coal mining will be gone in 10 years. It will not. We have to find ways to educate them, to bring them on. And to Mark's point, these jobs are not just good-paying jobs. They're what I call family-sustaining jobs. One parent can work, and the other can raise the children, send them to school, and they have great benefits, medical benefits, and there's just a lot of advantages to creating and keeping these kind of jobs. And the communities are, they're the fabric that makes us stronger. We've got to make sure that we support those, educate those, and train them and bring them along. But I would also add that one of the biggest things we can do going forward is make sure that the safety of our employees remains not a priority. Priorities change. It has to be a value. It has to be the number one value for our company, to whereas we're going to keep every employee safe, and our job as running companies is to create as safe as work environment as we can. And to do that, we need young people. We need people that's coming in, understands that we can build a future and we're going to be here. I mean, if you look at mining products, they're used in almost everything we do today. And they'll continue to be that way, whether it's the rare earth materials that's making the things or it's coal products. Any of these things that we're doing are needed for this country to be sustainable going forward and live the lifestyles that we currently live today.
Jeff, I want to go back to you and Denise, if there are any new technologies you see on the horizon in terms of this local footprint, environmental footprint that you see that will impact the communities that you work in.
Yeah, well, mining is a virtuous cycle, in my opinion. I mean, we produce the metals and the minerals that are required to make mining more sustainable, to build the solar panels and to build the wind turbines, and then it loops back. And as we keep developing the technology, we'll become more and more sustainable. So it's a process that we all have to work on. And as mentioned previously, we all have a responsibility to leave something behind after the mine is closed. I know in my previous position, I was president of Komatsu Latin America. I lived in Chile for 20 years. And it was part of our task was to train technicians. They didn't exist. It wasn't like Australia or United States or Canada. So, we have huge training centers down there. Caterpillar has the same sort of thing. So our responsibility to the community is much more than just supporting our customers. We need to train the people. We need to be able to do that. And afterwards, that country is better off. We've left that behind. That's a permanent contribution that we've made to the development of that country.
Yeah, and I would add, I think you bring up a great point in the responsibility, and you look at mining companies and running 24/7 in very remote areas, it creates a situation where the equipment needs to be durable, it needs to last, and it needs to be able to be rebuilt. And so ensuring that as we're designing equipment to support and sustain that local site, it's about designing parts that can be reused, and that has a sustainability aspect to it as well. Remanned components, rebuilt components, and then that extends also to the technician training and the ability to be able to upskill, especially as we move towards a much more automated and electronic workforce. It's getting the skill sets which traditionally could have been perhaps not as sophisticated, and moving that along that continuum where they're actually doing that work that would traditionally be probably something that would be very skilled. So I see that as a contribution that we can make to help support, which has both sustainability as well as local community training and sustaining.
So in terms of automation, the mining industry has been on the forefront of a lot of innovations like autonomous vehicles, and now is uncovering value using digital tools like artificial intelligence and advanced analytics. What do you see as the most exciting and promising applications of those? And I'm actually going to start with you, Denise.
Okay, great. It is a really fast-moving and changing space, and I think as you look at automation and what it does, it's one thing to move a piece of equipment from one spot to the other, and you think about the automotive industry and autonomy, and it's really about a point solution of moving from one place to the other. When you're talking about mining, however, it really is about optimizing the site and looking at the movement as you would in a factory to ensure that you're not creating any bottlenecks, that you're actually, the flow through the mine site is optimized such that you're enhancing productivity. And on top of that, safety, which is really the game changer, I think, in the use of automation is the ability to do so with zero injuries. And that's been a really important step forward, which I think is an additional benefit. What I think is exciting as you think about, though, adding electrification in with automation, is that there's an opportunity to take that to the next level. Because as you think about a piece of diesel equipment, a large mining truck, for instance, you fill it up with diesel fuel, and you fuel that once every 24 hours. So you're sustaining that. But when you look at an electrified large mining truck, and you need to charge it intermittently throughout the cycle, how that could potentially impact productivity. You can't have all the mining trucks have to be charged all at the same time. So it creates another layer of complexity that needs to be managed, and I think gives you an opportunity to ensure you're doing that along with the flow of the production as well. And so you're able to direct that as part of it. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see how the site communication gets expanded as you think about how that is going to really work in the future.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Yeah, well, I think Denise covered it very well. Automation has, two great benefits. Firstly, it's safety, because you're getting people out of harm's way. And also it relates back to one of our previous points, that you take a truck driver and you're going to upskill him to do something else. And that something else will give him a skill that he can use in a different industry. So that's also a permanent contribution that we're making on the ESG side. Also, automation allows the machines to be run optimally. So you increase productivity, you increase the life of the components, you reduce your costs, and you increase the utilization of the machine. You're not stopping for shift change or anything like that. The machine will run 24 hours a day. And as we move to automation, or indeed teleoperation is the same sort of thing. It's a halfway step. In fact, at the Komatsu stand, we've got a PC 7000 that's at our Arizona proving ground, 400 miles away, which will be operated from someone at the stand today. But that allows you to, the operators don't have to go to the mine site, they don't have to wear PPE, you don't need to build camps. They can be in a urban situation, safe, and you don't have to work a 12-hour shift. If they get tired after 4 hours, put someone else in the telecommanded operation. They can go and play ping pong or have a cup of coffee or something. When they feel better, come back again. So the industry's moving that way. Automation, electrification, as Denise said, to make the machines more efficient and more productive and reduce costs and safer.
From a producer's standpoint, let's talk about the benefits. Jimmy, can we start with you?
Yeah. Well, if you look at innovation, again, it's a story that we haven't told very well. It's not new. Technology is not new. We continue to improve upon it. We continue to look for new technology. But most people today still have the impression that if you go down in a coal mine, you're going to see people with pick and shovels.
Right.
Doesn't happen like that anymore. I mean, it's highly technology. We've embraced it for years. The longwall systems that they provide for us are very, very technology sophisticated, in fact, whereas they're like running your computer at home. But people don't realize that until they go down underground and they get to see that firsthand. So one of the things that we need to do is conduct more of those mine tours, let people know what actually is going on underground. The other thing that I'll add to Denise and Jeff's point is the work environment as well as the safety features that it provides for us. For an example, if you have respirable dust, which we deal with in underground coal mines, if you have automation on that shear, whereas that operator can stand back and just watch the shear do the work and cut the coal and not have to be up in the dust and be exposed to that, it's a critical safety and compliance innovation that we'll continue to work on and get better. You know, we've had coal mines. I visited with a gentleman one time, and they were running their longwall from the surface, and it was 4.5 miles away underground. And no one was on the face except for one person just kind of watching it. So this technology and innovation has been there. I think we need to embrace more of it. We need to work hand in hand with the manufacturers and even with our employees, because often, you know, our job is to make sure that if one of our employees makes a mistake, I want to use engineering technology that will prevent him from getting harmed even though he made a mistake. And they have the ability to do that with the equipment, and it's a training process, and it's an investment in our employees, our coal mine, and most importantly, our future.
And Paul?
Yeah, I think Jimmy's point was dead on. I think the general perception outside the mining industry is at best you're a generation off on where the technology exists and the type of jobs that we actually do. And as I look at our own journey, go back to the early 2000s when, the first iteration was the introduction of dispatch systems, where the large mines with the huge fleets of trucks were controlled by computers and directed by computers. And I think it was a learning curve for all of us, but that was dipping the toe in technology. And that was a good example of where the actual fuel consumption per truck went down, but the number of trucks went down, or the fuel consumption went up. The trucks were being more efficient, but the number of trucks we needed went down. So that was the early start of the genesis of automation. And as we move down the line, the semi-autonomous, the autonomous equipment, no question it's been a game changer. I think anybody that's been on a tractor for 12 hours in a cast blast knows how you feel when you get off. You feel a little beat up at times. The ability now to put somebody in a remote station and operate 3, 4, 5 tractors just as efficiently or more efficiently is an amazing change that all of us. Same thing's true with drills. And probably the most item that I've been most excited about is the very issue that Jim talked about. The automation of the longwall face is something that has really been a game changer. Instead of having that shear operator in the dust down on the face, we could now have them sitting up in the mine office or even remotely. That not only improves the efficiency, but it protects that operator. We've taken that person from a place of high risk and eliminated that completely with technology.
And Mark?
So listening to that, for me, first of all, some of the best truck drivers are women.
It's good to hear.
But I think technology and innovation needs investment, and just like the call for reduction in emissions, we can do it. We promise and we do it, but we need to we have to have a complete reinvestment to really change things. We need proper platforms, and the industry is not equipped to support the sort of innovation that our industry needs. And so, real-time information, you can't just get it. You've got to invest in it. And again, integrated to that is education. And the mining industry traditionally has always got to the back of the queue at the universities and technical training colleges. And we've got to get to the front of the queue and get those really smart young people into our businesses so that we can build those platforms that'll give us the necessary information to be able to make the innovative breakthroughs that we need to make to get there. And that's the thing that concerns me most, is that as an industry, we've always rushed to comply instead of, in a considered fashion, invested. And again, an expo like this has to be a forum where we all align ourselves in re-engineering our industry for the future. And that's the challenge I would leave to this audience and the various components of our industry that are represented here today.
Mark makes a good point. On the introduction of AI or integration of AI after several years, I'd love to hear from any of the rest of you about what you think the challenges are. Mark mentions investment, but what are the challenges that you see that need to be grappled with as it grows in its role in your field?
I think one of the big challenges, and for us to get to where we want to be with automation, technology, employee training and all that, we also need to work on the approval process. I mean, some of these regulatory agencies, to get some of these things approved takes years. And if we're going to make investments, mining's a highly capital intense. It takes a lot of capital to do those things. And the approval process is very, very slow. Now, we need to take the time to make sure that we get it right and that it will be safe for our employees, and it allows innovation to move on.
Anyone else have anything
Yes,
to add?
I think the point I would make is, again, the OEMs are represented today, is even today, the equipment we are buying have so many data points generating data, and we can't process them. We don't have the ability to use them, and we know that airlines can monitor engines mid-flight across the Atlantic and manage things, and so some of the equipment we use are already equipped to supply that sort of AI. But as miners, we are not. We've got to invest in the proper platforms to be able to assimilate that. AI is an abused term in the mining
Yes.
industry, and for us
And
to
other
get
places.
there, we've got a little way to go.
Jeff?
Yeah, Mark, you're absolutely correct. And I think it's a funny thing. I think COVID has actually pushed us up that curve very quickly. The fact that, we can't get for a year and a half now, we couldn't get our technicians onto the mine sites, and it was difficult to move around. We've pushed heavily into the, remote health monitoring of the machines and developed those skills, and gone up that curve very steeply and realized, not only ourselves as OEMs, but our customers have realized the true value in this, and that we don't need so many people on site anymore. We can do a lot of this analysis off-site, and it's been very, very successful. We had an example of a mine in South Africa that didn't have the skill sets, as Mark pointed out, to analyze the onboard information. So we streamed that back to our monitoring team that we had in Australia, and they worked overnight to analyze the information and sent the information back in the next morning, to do the analysis of that data on the other side of the world. And so we're moving forward on that very, very, very quickly. And strangely enough, COVID gave us a good shove by obliging us to do that.
Yeah, I would just add to what Jeff has to say. I think, we've been able to pull hundreds of channels of data off from machines for a long period of time. It's taking that data and actually making use of it and providing insights for the mining companies to be able to make decisions, to be more effective in maintenance practices, and also from an OEM perspective to use that data to design the next level of components so that the durability is improved, so that the failure modes that you find potentially at one site where there's an extreme condition, which are different than other sites, can be leveraged so that you're really improving the overall performance as a whole. So without a doubt, we're all working in that arena. I think COVID has provided more of a push to be able to do that in a way that isn't necessarily as site intensive, but allows us to really move faster in the space. And I think you're going to see more and more data being leveraged into insights that can be used to improve productivity, but also to lower cost. Because it really is about total lower cost for the mining companies, and uptime, reliability, and being able to predict when something's going to fail so that you don't wait for it to fail and then have to recover that.
Paul, you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, the only point I would add is, the industry is not monolithic. And you might lose track, there's 800 coal mines in the United States, I think, or somewhere around there that's left. Of those 800, only about 50 of them are scale mines, big mines, longwall operations. So there's this huge population of small mines, at least on the coal side, that's out there that how do we transform this technology for them is, I think, one of the leading questions. And how do we give them some of these advantages on safety and health and wellness? And I think that's always been one of the issues I've had with the AI things.
Okay, I just want to, we started talking about safety, which is a top priority, and as obviously automation, AI help remove people from challenging in locations in the mining environment, but I wanted to just see if there was any more, after we talked about the challenges, sort of safety innovations or anything that anyone wanted to touch on that haven't been touched on yet, but also to ask you how, each of you, how the industry can best transition the safety culture to this next generation. And we're going to get to Mark's. We're going to get to the skill base and the recruitment and the education of those workers next. But if we could just stay on the topic of safety and sort of how you see this stage with automation, how you adapt through this transition to the next generation. And I'm going to call on you, Jimmy, because you were my last person.
Yeah, I think safety it's not something that we teach and train. It should be a way of life. So as we work with those employees, as we work with the manufacturers, our job is to create as safest work environment as we can. The safest one we can create, whether we do it with technology, machinery, or people. And I think one of the best things we can do to make sure that we sustain that in the future is, put our money where our mouth is. Invest in safety technology, train our people on how to run it and use it, become as cost effective as we can, and then also we have to remember that as we're training people safely, we're tracking safety, we cannot forget about the compliance part of that as well. So we don't want to go out and try to break record numbers, put someone at risk. We want to train a generation that, number one, we got to make sure this next generation understands we're going to be here, particularly when it comes to coal mining. But I think as we demonstrate, many coal mines have worked 1 million man-hours without a lost time accident, under a lot of them with the old technology, without all this new innovation. So we certainly can reach to new heights. We need our employees to do that. We need investments from technology, our manufacturers, and it'll take a real team effort. But a critical part of that will be how well we communicate going forward to all of these younger generation that's going to be coming behind us.
Does anyone else want to add anything more to that?
Yeah, I think the key thing is, it's been touched on, is ownership. We've got to own our own workspace, and it's interesting. Barrick has operations in 13 different countries, and our emerging market mines have better safety records than our developed world mines, and it's about ownership. And I think therein lies the whole concept of license to operate, and making sure that people come to work to be part of a business, not just come to work to do a job, particularly in a mining environment where it's heavy industry that we're operating.
What I would add is, this is one case where the industry has probably not done a really good job of talking about its successes. It is a good story. Over the last 15, 20 years particularly, the industry, particularly the coal side, has done a very good job of lowering lost time incident rates and about any metric you want to use. We've done a very good job of pushing the technology side. There's more to do, particularly on the wellness and dust and those type of issues. I think the real challenges we've all faced is some of the issues that have been pointed out, and that's the people side of things. We have always struggled with getting someone to do the right thing at the right time, and giving them that social license to say no to something, to stop something has always been critical in the industry, but it's also been very hard to get people to do for a variety of reasons. And at the end of the day, I think the safety aspect of this business, as well as the talent aspect, are probably the two most interesting pieces we all have out there, because they're coming down to non-technical decisions in a lot of ways. It becomes on how we manage and motivate people.
So moving on to the talent and looking to the next generation, obviously success and innovation requires new skills and new thinking, and the competition for that talent is going to span the globe and across other industries. What can the industry do to get this next generation excited about a career in mining? What can it do to partner with universities and schools so that the infrastructure is there educationally to ensure that they have the skills required? And I obviously have to start with Mark because I think he was itching to get to this topic.
You know, it's all about investment, and we haven't invested in the young people and our own future. But again, we're an industry that grasps at instant gratification, and you know, people and skills and communities require investment, and I think that's what we've seen, that the pivoting of the industry to realize that, you know, it's one of the smallest components of the global economy, but it touches everyone's life. And if you just walked up a little bit here to that tower, the Eiffel Tower restaurant, looked around, and then took away everything that was connected to mining, it would be a little bit depressing what you would see. And so for us to sustain civilization and to give everyone a chance to uplift their lives, we need serious investment, not only in mining, but in the skills required to be able to be responsible miners. And I think it's such a fantastically exciting career. And we've got a broad spectrum, but we as miners need to go to those universities. We need to market the careers that we offer, and we need to invest in the brightest of the brightest. And we need to also change our way we do things so that those young, bright people who challenge us every day are welcome in our businesses, and that they don't get sort of moved out because they're so challenging of the sort of archaic way we approach things from time to time as an industry. And I think so our industry really does need liberation in every sense.
And Paul. Thank you, Mark.
You know, as I said, the attraction of talent is one of the more fascinating parts of this business. And, you know, I think back, if I were getting out of school and 23 years old, you know, would I choose this industry to go into? And it's a hard question to answer, and it's not probably a pleasant question because of the perception of the outlook are not what they were 40 years ago. And I find that a little sad, but you know, what we have to do is be willing, as Mark says, we have to go outside of what we have traditionally done for recruitment, and it gets into the whole question of diversity and others, that there is huge talent pools out there that we have traditionally not tapped into, that whether it's we can help along through STEM education, or if that's not the proper career path, whether it's vocational education, electrical, welding, there are great jobs that we can contribute and bring people into. And we need to look into the more non-traditional places where these people exist. And that new thinking and new talent pool of people, that's the piece we got to tap into and really, you know, bring forward for the industry.
Jimmy?
I think there's really, I think Mark and Paul covered most of it. There's three things that I think about: empowerment, flexibility, and communication. So let's talk about empowerment first. I think every employee working in the mining sector should have the power to shut down a piece of equipment that he or she feels is unsafe. I think he or she should also be included as part of inclusion on the design of that equipment. A lot of times, one of the faults we make is we send, you know, like our master mechanic or the highest level maintenance person we have to these shops to look at the machines. We should be sending the operators who are going to be running those every day to help look at those innovations and things that they can have. We have started doing a lot of that. Second thing I talked about was flexibility. We have to get out of the mindset that this is the way we operate, it's how it's going to be. Younger generations today, and this COVID certainly taught me a valuable lesson. I remember when we very first started working from home, to be quite honest, I was a nervous wreck. You know, I just didn't see how we would get all this done. Lo and behold, you know, 6, 7 months later, we hadn't really missed anything other than seeing people in person. The entire corporate office was working remote from home, and it worked great. So a lesson to be learned from that is how do we apply this flexibility moving forward? And we're certainly going to do some of those things. So, you know, every once in a while, disaster, you learn from it, and we should learn from those things. So that's the second. And then the third, I think, is something that all of us up here have talked about, you know, most of this session here, is communication. Do we get to these universities and talk to those students often enough? Do we communicate to them that here's what the future can look like for you? And we want you not only to come here as an employee, we want you to come here as a partner. And we have that open partnership and communication with them. And I find that you have to give them something exciting to want to come to. They're not going to want to come to a place that has the same rhetoric every day, the same procedure every day. So we've got to create some excitement for them. And probably most importantly, we got to believe in them and show them and trust them that we do.
Denise.
Just to add a little bit, I think as you look at millennials and what they're looking for, they're really looking for purpose. And I think one of the things that I know NMA has been working really hard on is changing, the way that mining is represented as we go approach and try to recruit individuals. There's no greater purpose than helping the world to grow and grow sustainably. So if you can tie to that purpose statement and then build on that with an exciting career, and you think about how technology is changing with mining, what's happening in the industry, the flexibility that's allowed through the use of technology as we move forward, and it's a pretty exciting future and a really exciting place to be. So I think it's getting all of that, getting the culture right, which I think Jimmy brings up appropriately. You can't keep your culture where it was, but having the ability to move people into different roles, showing them a career path within the industry. And, there's global mines, around the world. It's a great opportunity to see the world, especially for global miners. In a regional way, maybe not as much, but there's a huge opportunity for people and a big draw as a result of that. So I think it's playing on that as well as, obviously the basics of recruiting.
Jeff?
Absolutely, and I think Jimmy made a very interesting comment that we haven't been very good at explaining that mining is a pretty cool industry. We just haven't been good at explaining that. And technology-wise, it's changing. Our traditional sources of new talent are changing. As we're introducing AI, autonomous trucks, autonomous machines, those data technicians that we're looking for are now competing with Google and Amazon and Silicon Valley. So we as an industry need to change as well and attract those people. And we are attracting them. They're starting to realize, well, this is really cool. I can work on a autonomous truck. And that's an important aspect of it, is the flexibility that we need as an industry. And we need to spend a bit more time blowing our own trumpet about all the good things that we've done.
And in terms of your current workforce, obviously new technologies create challenges because they require new skills. If you can talk about the initiatives you've taken from your different perspectives to upskill your existing workforce in this time. Why don't we start with Paul?
I think our approach has really been two parts and has a lot to do with my earlier conversation on diversity. The industry for years had relied on either bringing in talented people from other operations or stealing people from each other to man operations. That traditionally had worked until now when the industry started shrinking badly and the ability to move people around went on. The way we've approached this is twofold. First, we have decided that we have to create an environment where people want to stay and want to be a part of the operations or the company. And that involves a lot of things, but it involves creating a environment where diversity and the inclusion of people that traditionally were not in the workforce are welcome. Then once that stage is set, I think the other critical piece is a willingness to bring in young talent and investing in that young talent. And whether that means bringing a young man or woman from high school that has the aptitude and wants to learn a skill, and we teach them something on a technical side, or if their aptitude is more towards academics, and bring them in that way. But either way, these are the paths we all need to take now. I think that what worked in the past is probably not going to work going forward. Then the last piece of this is simply retention, and it was where I started out earlier. When we get good people, we need to treat them right. We need to show them that they're valued, and we need to find reasons to keep them at the operations.
And in terms of diversity and inclusion, you're going to be looking, as you mentioned, all of you, for people who might not be pursuing a career in mining and who might not only not have the skills, but might not be romanced by an industry that has not, as you've said, socialized itself, introduced itself to this next generation. There's a high correlation between company performance and the diversity of their workforce. How does diversity and inclusion factor into your company's strategies to acquire this new talent? And to Paul's point, I'd love for the rest of you to talk about retention rates. What can you do to retain diverse talent, and how do you improve retention rates or sustain good ones if you have them at your companies? And why don't we go back to Jeff?
Sure. I mean, I think a lot of what we're doing in terms of automation and tele-remote operations opens up a whole new opportunity for us, as Jimmy mentioned, in terms of flexibility, where we don't have to send the people to the mine sites now, and they spend a lot of time away from their homes. That gives us a huge opportunity to tap into a different pool of talent. Also, the openness that we've seen during this COVID process about our ability to work remotely has allowed us to be more flexible in the rules that if you come to work with us, you have to come and live in Milwaukee or Peoria or wherever. And now we can attract people by saying you can live wherever you want and you come and work for us. So I think we need to be radically different in our attitude towards retaining people, but also what's their motivation for coming to work for us? What drives them? What do they want? And most of us are older, so we actually need to spend more time talking to the millennials about what it is they want to be, because in 20 years from now, they're going to be the managers of our companies.
Yeah, I also think it's about being more aggressive in going after diverse talent. As we've really looked at historically, you usually want to hire someone that you can relate to and that you can see yourself in. And as we've had teams of folks go out and interview, we found that if we have interview panels that are diverse to start with, that actually helps to bring in additional diverse talent, because they're looking at it through a different lens. We're also having to be, I think, more aggressive in how we think about how we design our equipment. One of the things that was really interesting is we started to really dissect the technicians that we were actually our customers, if you will, of the maintenance practices within the equipment. recognized that a lot of those tasks were really geared towards, you know, larger males. And so if you want to have a diverse set of technicians, you have to make sure you're designing such that, you know, the capability of people that are maybe very different sizes and shapes are able to work on that equipment effectively. So we're thinking more about that from a design perspective, which I think allows you to integrate in diversity as well. It's a big challenge, though. I think as you think about just the perception of the industry, women aren't naturally drawn to it. So you have to find ways to bring them in, which are very different than we've done before. And it's aggressively pursuing them. And it does require a real effort, because if you just think it's going to happen naturally, it won't.
Well, I'd actually like you to expound on that. What are the ways, Denise, that you can bring, what are the aggressive ways that you think will be successful, or you have found to be successful in attracting women and compelling them to the industry?
Well, I think it means a lot to women who look at companies if they see other women in leadership positions. If a woman can do it and they can see a mine manager, or, you know, in the case of Caterpillar, a very senior engineering leader as a woman leading the team, they know that, okay, then maybe there's a path for me to get there as well. And so I think that helps. I think there's definite ways that you can work through the pipeline itself and making sure that people are getting the right experiences so that they're ready to move through the organization and levels. Because we have a lot of companies, and Caterpillar's one of them. You know, we hire a lot, and then we get through the middle ranks, and all of a sudden we've lost people, and then we have, you know, a few at the top, but we lose them through the pipeline. So it's making sure that we have good career paths, active mentoring, and that we're putting the right assignments in place so that they're being developed and feel that they can get through. And then I think that helps to attract more as we move forward. It's a great question.
And Jimmy, what strategies have you found the most successful to attract a diverse workforce?
Well, I think when you look at diversity, it's going out and recruiting a certain skill set that you need that you may not have in your operation today. But I think more importantly, we have to change our willingness to, you know, look outside or think outside the box. And what I mean by that is, you know, scheduling is a big deal to most employees, particularly the millennials, the younger ones. You know, no one wants to work 6 and 7 days a week anymore. So we tried to look at some of the scheduling to whereas maybe you can't have every weekend off, but we can make something to whereas you can have 2 consecutive days. So we've worked some with the scheduling, try to be as efficient as we can. But the other big thing in the recruitment process, and to Paul's point earlier on retention, is I think inclusion. If you include them in the solutions and make them part of it, I think it gives them something exciting to do. Now, one of the worst things we can do is include them and not listen to them and not do anything that they want to develop. So I think as we move forward and look at the next generation, we're going to have to be much more flexible. We're certainly going to have to be considerate of what those employees need or what those recruits need. And maybe we start asking right out of the gate, you know, what do you need? What would it take for you to come to work here? Here's what we offer. What do we need to do differently? And interview some people and, you know, hire some people that can bring the people to us, and we can set and train them and get them to understand what we're trying to do. And not only understand it, but they can be a huge part of it.
And Paul?
Yeah, I find it fascinating, and I'll just tell a personal story. My youngest daughter, you know, was trying to decide, like most kids, is when they're 17, 18, what they were going to do. And she's a bright young lady, and by happenstance, my alma mater had a summer camp for a week on explosives. That was not a traditional thing I would have, first of all, thought she would be interested in, and it's generally not, you know, a path that a lot of young women pursue. But she went to that, and it lit a desire or a fire in her to, you know, be a part of things, and it's something that I never really would have thought happened. She ultimately pursued a career in engineering. She didn't go into mining, but she has been very successful. And it's what I took away from that was it's amazing what sparks that interest, what sparks that desire, And that's the piece that I've always been interested in, is how do we find that for people, particularly the groups that we're trying to bring in and include. So.
That's wonderful. And Mark?
So, young people are self-teachers, something
For
that
better or
we're
worse?
not good at in our generation. And so, and also, they do things more effectively. So traditionally, we confuse hard work with time at the job. And I think young people bring a lot more innovation, but they also want to be part of a community. I think, you can off-site lots of people, but you break the community down. And the one thing that we've found is invest in your community, and the key one is childcare. And
Yes.
if you invest, we've done a lot of investment. You invest in childcare, you liberate women, and the best untapped skill source in the world are women who are sort of trapped by many things. And I think that you invest in childcare, real childcare, where you offer quality education. It's the best investment we can make in our communities. And so for me, and that brings better rounded families, which deliver more integrated communities, and therefore the quality of the young people coming out of those communities have more time and responsibility and have aspirations, because everyone thinks I've got millennial children, and they are as ambitious as I was. They just have a different way of getting there, and they utilize their time much more efficiently than a lot of us do. And so for me, I think the mining industry, as part of its investing in its own future, is that opportunity to invest in communities and make sure that the entire community is available to reach their own aspirations within our industry.
Terrific. This has been an amazing panel, and I welcome all my panelists to just close with some brief, quick final remarks. Anything you forgot to add? Jeff?
No, I just go back to my original comment that it's just so terrific to be able to get together today, or these few days at MINExpo. Mining is a very fraternal group, so I'm looking forward to that.
Denise?
Yeah, I would say, things are changing and changing fast. There's never been a better time than now to be in mining, and it's really an exciting time.
Thank you. Jimmy?
I would say it's awesome to see a crowd like this. It's a bigger crowd than I've seen in the last year and a half, so it's great to see people again. I agree with what's been said up here. It is an exciting time for mining. There's demand again for our products. There's demand for the people. I think the future is very bright, and we need to do some things that we talked about up here, and I think we'll be in great shape.
Thank you.
I'll say amen, and the only thing I'd add is these issues we're talking about today, the ESG, the diversity, inclusion, they are all good things, and they can be used properly.
Thank you. And Mark?
I just leave everyone with this challenge that this is a long-term game. We're here all together. We should be thinking about how we're going to make sure that we retain our social license and our license to operate as an industry.
Thank you so much. I'd like another round of applause for our panel, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. You're wonderful. Thank you so much.
Abby. Thank you.
Thank you once again to today's general session sponsor, Nevada Gold Mines, operated by Barrick.
Nevada Gold Mines was established in 2019 as a joint venture, held 68.5% by Barrick, the operator, and 31.5% by Newmont. The company's significant assets across Nevada were combined to create the world's single largest gold-producing complex, producing approximately 3.5 million ounces of gold a year. At Nevada Gold Mines, our vision is to create long-term value for all of Nevada, and we live out that vision by embedding the principles of partnership and sustainability into every decision we make. We are all Nevadans, and together we make the Silver State and its future golden.